Very happy now to be back with the Massachusetts Senate Minority Leader Bruce Tarr. Senator Tarr, welcome back. We're in the Christmas season here, for what it's worth.
Well, good afternoon, Rick, and it certainly seems like Christmas after that snowstorm we just experienced.
How about that? How about that? And I appreciate all the updates you sent out and the warnings you had on tartalk.com. They were very timely, very helpful, and you had a lot of links there too that we could check out. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Rick. We want to make sure everyone stays safe, and information is the best tool we have to do that. So, we've been trying to share information, and one of the things that we've been able to share lately are situation reports, which come from the Executive Office of Public Safety and the Mass Emergency Management Agency, and we find those working internally very valuable. So we ask for permission to share them with the public, and they give you a sense of what's happening with the storm, but also what the state is doing about it and resources. So we're really happy to share information. And if anybody has suggestions for other kinds of information we could share, we're happy to receive them.
Excellent, excellent. And I will link to tartalk.com as well in this segment this week. All right, Senator, let's go. Last we talked, the budget was in flux, or no, it wasn't, but a lot of stuff was in flux, I guess, but the budget was pretty much sealed. An update on that?
So the governor did sign the budget into law, but in doing so, he also did veto some parts of it. And so he vetoed about $166.7 million in spending, which in the scheme of a $47 billion budget is not a tremendous amount, particularly compared to what we've seen in the past. He also vetoed some of the outside sections. And Rick, it's important to put that into perspective. So outside sections are generally areas that either seek to control how the money is spent that's inside the budget, or they affect some matter of public policy. So an example of that is the ignition interlock legislation that I was able to get passed was an outside section of the budget. And I'm very pleased to report the governor signed that into law. So it is now law in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But there are about 113 outside sections, and the governor vetoed 17 of them in one way or another, either by outright vetoing them or sending them back with amendments, which are suggestions for how we should change them and modify them, send them back. So we're through that part of the process, and now the legislature is taking up those vetoes. The House goes first because they initiate the budget document, and so we're waiting for the vast majority of them to come to us from the House in the Senate so we can take them up. But so a couple of things that bear repeating, Rick. The budget as signed, level funds, Chapter 70 educational funding with an adjustment to account for inflation and enrollment. So it actually keeps pace with those things and level funds. And also local aid to cities and towns is level funded. And no health safety net program is reduced as to its eligibility. So we're making sure with this budget that everyone can get the things they need to be safe in the pandemic. And that includes things like $30 million of emergency food assistance, $50 million for RAFT, which is a program that not everyone knows about, and it's rental arrearage, so that it pays back a back-owed debt for rent to help people that can't afford their rent right now so they can stay in their housing. And then there's another $50 million in the budget for homeless folks. So a lot of important things in the budget. It's been a relatively smooth process up until now. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll be taking up the vetoes in the House and the Senate.
You passed over an outside portion of something that you entered into the budget. Could you explain that again, please?
Sure. So we had talked in the past about the ignition interlock legislation, which is something I've been working on for at least the past 5 years. And right now in Massachusetts, or up until this change, second and subsequent offenders for operating under the influence of alcohol can be required, if they get a hardship license, to have an ignition interlock device, which essentially is a breathalyzer connected to your car's ignition. And so it requires you, each time you want to drive the vehicle, to conduct a breathalyzer test. And if your blood alcohol count is low enough, it allows the vehicle to start. And if it's too high, it prevents it from starting. Now, in every other state in the union, that device is allowed to be required for first-time offenders, except Massachusetts. And so I was able to work with my colleagues in the Senate. I offered the legislation as an amendment. It passed. One thing that's significant is under the language that I've secured, it only would apply to folks that have a blood alcohol content of greater than 0.15. So this isn't for every first-time offender. These are for the more serious class of first-time offenders. And you would be required, if you do get a hardship license, the registrar could require you to have an ignition interlock device. And the statistics around this, Rick, are absolutely staggering in terms of the power of this tool to prevent drunk driving deaths. And so Mothers Against Drunk Driving, AAA, there have been a lot of advocates for this, including Governor Baker and a number of my legislative colleagues. So I'm so pleased that that section was not one of the sections that the governor vetoed.
Well, congratulations. Making the roads safer is a huge priority. Thank you for that, Senator. Appreciate that. And
My pleasure.
now let's move along. We'll talk a little bit about COVID and how things are progressing in the state.
So one of the things that's important is that among the sections in the budget that got signed into law was an earmark that I did for the communities in our Senate district, providing them with $250,000 to help with the additional costs of dealing with the virus. Now, that isn't the largest amount of money in the world, but it's a recognition that there are additional costs, and hopefully it can help with things like testing and when it's possible to distribute the vaccine. And that's really the most important news right now, is that the vaccine is being distributed in Massachusetts, the Pfizer vaccine. The Moderna vaccine is close behind it in terms of the approval process. And really, it's a question of getting the vaccines out as quickly as possible. And what the state did was put together through the Baker administration a 3-tiered plan for how to do that. That got submitted to the federal government. It got approved. And right now we're in the first phase of it, which are really for healthcare workers that are front-facing with people that may have COVID-19, and for our first responders. And that phase goes for a while, and then we'll get into the second and third phase. But basically, by the time we get into the end of March, the beginning of April, we should start seeing the vaccine more broadly available. But for right now, 2 tiers, and those are prioritized according to risk.
It's great to have
3 tiers, I'm sorry.
Great to have that ball rolling. And what else is on your agenda here for us today, Senator?
So, you know, Rick, we've got a couple of local bills that are moving through the legislature. And one of the aspects of Massachusetts that may be different from other states in some respects is that our communities send us what are called home rule petitions, which means that a local legislative body, with the approval of the executive branch in a municipality, can send us requests for permission to do things or requests for special acts, a whole host of things. And right now we have 2 that are very interesting coming from Gloucester. The first has to do with Mados Field. And originally, in order for the new school to be built that was approved by the voters, there had to be legislation allowing the land that is Mados Field right now to be used for school purposes, because it was protected by Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution, or at least most people believe it was. There was a bit of an open question, but to answer that question, the city sent us a home rule petition. It got approved, signed into law. Now there's an issue of sequencing in terms of when does the field get decommissioned, when does the new recreational facility in East Gloucester at the East Gloucester School get built, and how do all these pieces work together? So the city sent us an additional home rule petition that is moving through the legislature. It's now in the Senate Committee on Bills in the 3rd reading, of which I'm a member. And so that one is moving. But also, there's a very interesting concept that was sent to us by the Gloucester City Council and Mayor Romeo Taken relative to helping restaurants that have seasonal liquor licenses. And the idea behind this particular bill is that restaurants are having a really hard time. Many of them only hold a seasonal liquor license, but they're struggling to hang on through the winter months. So the idea of this home rule petition would be to allow Gloucester to allow those seasonal liquor licenses to continue through the winter. And that bill was approved today by the Senate. It's going over to the House where Representative Ferranti is going to work to move it. And it's a concept that is fairly simple. It's allowing a few more months, but if you're a restaurant and you need that additional income, it could make a huge difference. So I'm confident this is going to pass, and that's going to help restaurants in Gloucester. I also think it could become incorporated as more statewide policy at some point.
Okay, so that means that these restaurants that ordinarily would have to close, what, on December 1 or something, or stop serving alcohol, that they can continue through springtime? And
It
then,
would be, the date on the bill is March 31st, which is when I believe
okay,
you have to stop selling alcohol until March 31st with a
right,
seasonal liquor license. This would allow you to keep selling it through the spring when your license becomes active again.
okay. Is there any objection to that? That sounds like a great idea to me.
There has been some concern about competition in the marketplace with folks that hold year-round liquor licenses, but the consensus was among the city council and the mayor that for this 1 year, this would be something worth trying, again, to be able to help folks who are really, really having a difficult time keeping their doors open.
You know, anecdotally, Senator, I find it amazing that so many restaurant owners, at least on Cape Ann, are supportive of one another. You know, the competition seems to be healthy. And I've heard one owner after another speak highly of the other person and say, be sure that you, you know, visit this place and keep people going. So at least on Cape Ann, it may be competitive, but it's kind of tight knit and they support one another.
You're absolutely right. You know, there's a great spirit of collaboration on Cape Ann. And, you know, maybe that stems from our sense of geographic isolation. Maybe it's just we have great people on Cape Ann, and everybody is always willing to work together. And that extends between cohorts, so restaurants, but also among cohorts, so restaurants, hotels, retailers. There really is a great spirit of working together and trying to weather a storm. And we certainly are going through a very difficult storm right now.
Well, Senator, I don't know if you have any time off coming up because we're not going to do this next Friday due to the fact that it's Christmas Day. So we'll have to get together in a couple of weeks, I suppose. The following Friday is New Year's Day. So we'll have to do this in 2021.
Well, I look forward to that. And I look forward to continuing these conversations into the new year, Rick. In many ways, we've accelerated them or intensified them or increased the frequency of them because of the pandemic. But I enjoy them. I think they're a good idea. I really appreciate the opportunity to share updates and information. So I look forward to starting the new year, seeing COVID go away, but our conversations continue.